I was driving. We were on our way home. I had taken the kids to the zoo that day. I remember because they had the boy elephant in town visiting the girl elephant, and they were in this mating yard that was right there in the front center at the elephant exhibit. I was terrified as we walked through that the elephants were going to start doing like they do on the Discovery Channel, if you know what I mean. But thankfully, we made it through the day without that particular lesson. Now we were tucked in our car, the kids talking in the back, strapped safely in while I zoned out singing along to the radio. But I snapped to attention when I heard, "Mom, I am never having the sex." And that's all I heard of the conversation, this assertion from my sweet little 8-year-old daughter. Wait a second, where did this come from? As I turned down the radio and tried to gracefully merge into traffic on I-35 with my brain spinning in a million different directions, I asked as calmly as I could, "What is this sex of which you speak?" "You know," she said in her rambling little girl way, "when a grown-up boy and a grown-up girl are naked, in bed, in their underwear, kissing," and both kids giggled as my brain kept spinning. My daughter has this sort of lisp, so when she says grown-up girl, I hear gull, and it makes me think of birds. These like delicate little birds high up in the air with their air-filled bones and their fluttery ways. Kind of makes them float away on the slightest breeze. The women of the flock or of the crowd, just like I feared she would do, just like I did back then. My strong little daughter, this lisping little girl who spent her first week in the NICU on antibiotics because she had fluid in her lungs. My 10-pound, full-term baby girl who was shacked up next to tiny little preemie babies that were just a half or a third of her size. I remember finally walking to see her that first time. It was a long time after she was whisked out of the OR before I even got to hold her, before I was taken to my recovery room, and I kept asking the nurses, "When can I see my baby?" And they just kept avoiding my question. Long after I had to call her daddy, who was deployed and all the way over in Qatar during my high-risk pregnancy, to explain to him that, yes, we had called him just a few minutes ago. We told him that she was here and everything was fine and she was beautiful and she was healthy, but now there were complications. I sat in my bed clutching my damn scar and wishing it away and wishing myself to overcome the drugs that just left me half paralyzed and in this terrifying, out-of-control place. I was willing myself to get up and get out of my room and get to my girl. And when I finally got to her, with the tubes and the IV and this plastic bubble, the one that tiny babies could curl up inside of, but on my girl, it was like an astronaut's helmet. Further proof that I had visited a place I had never imagined, making a giant leap into the unknown, which is a truly scary place to be. But my tough girl, she wasn't scared, and she wasn't deterred by what the doctor said. She didn't listen when they said that she was probably going to have to take a helicopter to the emergency room at Children's, while I stayed there, alone, afraid, and away from her for at least 3 more days while she recovered. She was tough. She was tough enough for the both of us. And now, all these years later, we're driving down the highway and I see that same tough face in the rearview mirror, that tough little girl who's growing older. And that toughness is falling away and she's becoming more easily swayed in those winds of those around her, and I worry where those winds might take her. And I think back to when I was her age, how much my thoughts and hopes and dreams depended on everyone around me. How much it all just seemed scary and out of my control. And I didn't know what the sex was either, but it wasn't something I could just ask about. It wasn't talked about. I just kind of had to make my way, and I just wanted to fit in. And I figured it out as I went along using Barbie dolls and ill-advised input from my friends. And then I got older, and I did have the sex when I was right there on the verge of adulthood, if you believe the calendar, but so far away from it if you could see inside and what was going on inside. But I went there, and he wasn't the right guy, and it wasn't the right time or the right place. but the radio was on. And we were listening to Bad Company's Feel Like Making Love. And all I could think of is how ironic it was and how impossible it would be to forget. And probably then I thought it was a good thing. And then many years later, I made the mistake of telling my husband and my friends this story. And it's a mistake because every time the song comes on, there's laughing and teasing. But it's okay because I know their stories too, and we can all laugh about our misinformation now. And I think back of how the sex had once been the source of great shame when I didn't know any better, but great joy when I did. And how it was the sex that brought my children to me. And I never want either one of them to feel ashamed about it, especially my daughter. I never want her to feel ashamed about what sex can bring to her or what it can do for her. And I want both of my children to know that when done properly, the sex is an amazing, beautiful, powerful, natural thing, and a magical thing with someone that you love. And that's how it should always be. My son piped up right about then from his place on the other side of the car, a few years older and wiser. You know, some grown-ups like the sex. Ew, she said, and they both laughed. When it got quiet, I glanced at their rearview mirror again and I saw both sets of eyes pinned on me. Mom, do you like the sex? I felt myself turn about 50 shades of pale as I considered the question. Yeah, I'm not having this conversation with you right now. For now, I choose to keep my kids' version of the sex, adults in their underpants kissing, intact. The reality of it and whether or not I enjoy it, and the related topic of why mommy and daddy have a lock on the bedroom door, is a conversation for another day. But for now, I declare that the rest of the ride home is music appreciation time, and I turn the radio back up. And I hope to God that Bad Company's not on.